very own Jef McCurdy joining us. I mean, the big question, for everyone that I talk to is like, how'd you get into it?
You don't find roofing, roofing finds you.
When you're going into work or you're doing something every day or most days, it needs to be enjoyable. Well, how do you create that environment?
I try to treat everybody with respect, and that respect they'll give back to you, and people want to do good work. If they can't be proud of the work that they're doing, they're not going to be proud to represent you or your business or anything that way. It's funny because the bosses that yell the most seem to want the most out of their employees, but they get the least because they haven't done anything to earn that from their employees. Try to train people up and give them more opportunities to grow. People will be fiercely loyal to you, and your company will be just rewarded 10 times for that. Doing a good bid can take 3 hours. It could take 7 hours. It can take a lot of time depending on the complexity of the project. It's not the part where we're directly getting paid for. So it's very tempting to sort of rush through a bid. And what I find is when you do that and you end up missing something, you can create a lot of job site stress because now you're working on a project that's losing margin. Trying to convince people to take their time, bid things out with enough time to where you and your crew don't have to be stressed out. I think that's really important. It's okay to pass on a project. You will find another one. If it really comes down to having to take a small margin on a job, remember, margin is the food on your table. So it's not a game that I like to play, the lowering your price thing. Lots in the way of developing new systems, not necessarily new products. Our chairman of the board, Peter, does a great job developing the new products. I like to take the new products that we're working on and see how they're going to interact with other products. We've been looking at a walk deck spec for a long time. I'm testing multiple different materials over Ecador just as a top coat for it. We're constantly doing testing for like hail, other applications. I love finding where products that maybe were intended for this market but can do so well in this other market. I love looking at those things. So wish I had an extra day every week where I could just spend in the lab working on all of that fun stuff.
Let's talk about failures. I mean, some people take failures differently. I mean, how do you view it? How do you think about that?
Before I went into the last one of my failed businesses, my wife and I went into it eyes wide open. In order to get this going, this is going to take 100% and then some of our life savings. Kind of funny because we wrote it down and wrote down our points before we sat down to have a meeting and discuss, pros and cons. Both of us wrote about two of our favorite times previous to that in our lives together. One was the struggle that we went through to buy our first house. And it was 7 months of eating nothing but, our budget per meal was under $1 per person. In our minds, and I think it did suck at the time, but in our minds, we were like, that was actually some of the best time because it was her and I against the world. The second best time that we could come up with was right after we had lost everything in the Great Recession, house, vehicles, savings, everything. It was this totally unifying, okay, let's rebuild. And we did. Within 5 years of losing everything, we bought the house that we're in now, which is nicer than anything that we lost. And everything's actually better than anything that we've ever lost. Failing it hasn't ruined us yet. It's not going to ruin us later. We enjoy the process of rebuilding. Every one of those failures has gotten me something better in the end.